Welcome to Lee Domingue's podcast, where he shares stories and teaches principles behind why and how your legacy starts today.
Hey there, and welcome to the Legacy Starts Today podcast. I'm Lee Domingue, and super passionate about helping others not only start a legacy, but leave a legacy for generations. This month's podcast is going to be a little different format. My wife, Laura, and I got to sit down with an inspiring, amazing couple, Jon and Kathryn Gordon, at this year's Kingdom Builders Summit in Colorado. It was a live session for all of our summit attendees, and it was so good that I wanted to share it as an episode on the podcast on Legacy Starts Today. Jon is a best-selling author and keynote speaker. His principles have been used by numerous Fortune 500 companies, professional and college sports teams, school districts, hospitals, and nonprofits. Kathryn is a wife, a mother, a businesswoman, movie producer, best-selling author, and host of the Kathryn For Real podcast. You're in for a real treat as we get really raw about relationship struggles and what it takes to go the distance in marriage. You're going to feel inspired and walk away with some practical steps as well. So enjoy this edition of Legacy Starts Today, and make sure to tag me on social media to share what you've liked about it. Hey everybody, let's go ahead and get started. I'm really excited about this session. Wasn't Jon amazing? Thank you. You were fresh air, brother. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, we're gonna dive into this second session where we've got the amazing secret weapon of Jon Gordon named Kathryn Gordon with us. And so we're really excited to have them, the dynamic duo, with us. And we're gonna be talking about relationship grit. And we're gonna talk about a lot of things. And you never know when couples get together where this is gonna go. So we're gonna kind of, like he said, be raw, and we're gonna have a great time. And there's gonna be, we've got a plan, but we may deviate from the plan. And but I'm just so honored that you guys would, he says, hey, would you guys like moderate it, come up there with us? And, family's very important to Laura and I. You know, our story is a story of redemption. Our marriage is a miracle. And you never knew any of that.
No.
And so the fact that
I want to know now. I want to know now.
Yeah. That we've been married 32 years. And but the first couple years were really tough. And we had a choice to make, and there was a crossroads, and where we separated, and then God did a great work and redeemed our marriage. And so when you think about the impact of that, we wouldn't have had the 4 other kids. We wouldn't have had the soon-to-be 6 grandchildren, and we definitely wouldn't be in this room. And so, but God's faithful, and
amen.
Yeah,
yes.
Amen.
Isn't that amazing?
I'm gonna come closer to you.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but I wanted to share that with you guys. I know you didn't. A lot of you that are friends of ours, you know our story, and but my wife really is my secret weapon. I call her the cedar of Lebanon not because she looks like a tree, but because no. When you look at the Bible, what it says, it's like it's a big compliment because she's the strength, in our relationship. So she helps to keep it all together.
I try, but you're amazing.
And
you're the bigger tree. What is that? You're everything else, honey. You're everything else.
Yeah. And I do want to say on top of that, like, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for Kathryn. And I know that without a doubt. Like, she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And she had more faith for both of us when I didn't believe. I didn't have faith. And now I have so much faith, so much belief, but it wasn't always like that. And it was during those times, I know God brought her into my life, not just so that we can have our great relationship and marriage, but also so that I could be all that I'm meant to be, and then so that she can be all that she's meant to be in him. But I wouldn't be all that I'm meant to be without her, no doubt about it. So it's amazing how God puts the right people in our lives. I had an ex-girlfriend, and she we've been married like 4 or 5 years, and she reached out to me on Facebook, and I right away showed my wife the note, right away. And said, look, she reached out, and it said, is this really you? I can't believe it. I saw your book in a bookstore. You were always such a dreamer. I could have never supported a dreamer like you to do this. And I'm like, that's why God didn't have me marry you. And it's like, it's amazing how God works.
So give us a little bit, tell us, I want to know, give us a little bit of, your background. We've heard from you, but Kathryn, some of your background, and then how did you guys even meet?
Sure.
So I moved to Atlanta as a young adult, and I wasn't in the bar scene, wasn't in any of that. I was into yoga. I had partied very hard early on, I'll say that. It's a little bit in the book.
Tell your story, yeah.
Well, that's a whole other story. But I was walking down the street, and this guy was standing in front of a bar, and he said, hey, I'm having a party, come in. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I blew him off, and
I was 24 at the time.
He was 24, I was 28. So then a week later, I was at this event called the Best of Atlanta. And up comes this young guy again, remember me? And I was like, yeah. So I just gave him my card just to get rid of him. And he called me nonstop. And I kept blowing him off. And every time he'd call, I'd say, stupid stuff. I've got to wash my hair tonight. And one night he called me, and I was on the phone with a girlfriend. Remember back in the days when you could click over on your phone? So I click over and I answer the call, and it's him, and he asked me again to go out with him, and I said no. And he said, look, if you don't go out with me tonight, you never get to go out with me. And there was something about that.
Come on.
I was like,
the New York in me came out,
Who is this guy? I click over and I tell my girlfriend, and she starts cracking up. She goes, oh, you gotta go out with him. So I did. I met him at a place called The Tavern in Phipps Plaza in Atlanta. Didn't do my makeup, had my hair in barrettes. Just did not try at all.
I was like, is this the same woman that was at the party that night?
And here's what's funny. Remember, I didn't drink. I'd had a long history of that in the past. So I was like, okay, I wasn't drinking. And he ordered a Captain Morgan's and Coke. And he sucked it down so quick. And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Bar owner, heavy drinker, absolutely not. Well, Jon Gordon's not even a drinker. No. Like to this day, I could probably count on one hand how many times he does drink. So I still didn't like him. We kind of talked. We left. He said he wanted to see me again. I was like, yeah. And at the time, I had like a list of guys I was dating, to be honest.
Right, yeah.
And I had went to Amelia
Michael
Island.
Bolton's manager she was dating.
Yeah, I was dating some pretty high-profile guys.
Some rock stars were flying her different places. I had to beat up
Motley
Nissan
Crue,
Sentra.
some crazy stuff. And so I went to Amelia Island with some girlfriends, and I was just like, we were talking about guys, and I'm like, I'm gonna simplify. And I start marking guys off my list, and Jon Gordon wasn't even on the list. So this is how God works. I get back, and for some reason, I called him, and I said I was back in town, and he was over within an hour. And that night, we sat up, and we talked about God all night long until 3 a.m.
Yep.
And we've been inseparable ever since.
Yeah,
it was one of those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
I say it was love at first sight for me. For her, it took a few years, but.
That's why. That's a great story. I'm not real proud about this, what I'm gonna say next, but I had to propose to Laura the night before the Miss Texas pageant because I felt like if she won, there was no chance that she was gonna go marry some like European count of some nation or something, and I was in the car business. She was so it was, and she says, "Look, I'll marry you, but it'll be 5 years. I'll marry you in 5 years."
Wow.
It'll be the longest
Serious.
engagement. Yeah.
I was completely serious.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was.
She says, I'll marry you,
know.
but it'll be 5 years. I said, I got my foot in the door. And being a salesperson, I was like, oh, no, it's over. So how many of you know 11 months later we were married? Right? Come on. Yeah. And then the next said, look, but we'll have kids in 5 years. You had this 5-year thing. We'll have these kids in 5 years. And I'm like, okay, all right. 3 months later.
I think that's a pageant thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
And it was like I had this compulsive need to plan my life to control. And then I realized, and then I married Lee, and like, it's
out of control.
I'm out of control. The rest of my life, it's over.
Yeah. And then Winston was born. So that's awesome. Yep. So what led you guys to write the Relationship Grit book?
So my kids were raised and out the door, and I started running into women at the grocery store. And I'd be standing in front of the carrots, and a woman would come over to me. We had known each other probably through one of my kids playing sports, and they were still home with their littler ones, and they were falling apart. I mean, a lot of them were on the verge of divorce, just, anxiety. One woman, told me she was taking prescription pills, just trying to relieve her pain and anxiety from the stress. So I would stand there and just coach them. I would just talk to them. Really, I would share my story and the ugly parts of my story and how early on, Jon and I really struggled. I mean, there was a time when Jon and I, he was traveling all the time. And both of my kids were in elite sports. They were in travel sports. So I would go to a tennis tournament with my son. I'd be gone all weekend in some hotel that had no food, and get home, the house wasn't clean. I was just trying to keep up. And I'd finally reached, my breaking point. And I called Jon and I said, Jon, you need to come home. And he said, oh, okay. I'll stop speaking. I'll come home and do your job.
As I said, I wasn't a servant leader at that point. And I've been paying for that ever since, just so you know.
Oh, he has been.
And I'm not proud of that.
But I was so
So good.
desperate.
So good.
And so
We share that in the book, by the way. People are like, I don't like you, Jon.
Yeah, people will start reading the book and they get to, I think, R.
Or in the beginning, even in the beginning,
and they're like,
me.
I don't like him. I go, keep reading.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was in need of some help, and I said, okay, come home. And he did, and it was a transformative year.
That was my year of serving. So.
But to answer your question, in that, because we had dealt with so many things, I knew what these people were going through. I knew what these women were going through. And I knew that if we could stay together, anybody could. Wow. So.
Because it wasn't just that. I mean, as we share in the book, I mean, one, she must have left me because I was negative. Two, early on at, 31 years old, 28, 29, there was a little infidelity. And so, and I didn't tell her.
I want to tell y'all about that.
No, let me just tell that part.
Okay. Because there's a part to that.
But I didn't tell her until I was 40 years old.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so that happened when I was 31. I told her at 40, and I remember talking to a pastor friend of mine, and he said, did you I don't want to say, but did you close the deal? And I said, well, no, it wasn't that, but it was definitely, flirtatious. It was, this and that. And he said, well, then you don't have to tell her. I said, I'm feeling convicted by God that I have to tell her. And I had to tell her. So I told her, and that was another time she really almost left me, and you can take it from there if you want. But I mean, yeah, she almost left me then, even though, again, I had become a Christian. I wasn't a Christian when that happened. I became a person of faith, and then, God changed me in so many ways, and now I'm out there speaking, I'm doing this work. It was, even, I guess, after the serve part, where I was serving at home, perhaps, and then I felt the need, I knew I needed to tell her, and then when I told her, all of a sudden, it didn't matter that it was 11, 10 years ago. It mattered that how she felt in that moment, and felt betrayed, and felt like, how could you do that? But I'm like, that's not me. That was another guy. But it wasn't, it still was me. Even just, I had changed so much. And so it was hard. So now, literally, I feel like our marriage is gonna end. And so that was so not only did it almost end that first time, but now a second time. And then many times along the way with fights and disagreements and just things that, you just, so many times you just wanna just walk away. because it's so hard.
You want to give up.
Yeah, you want to give up because it's so hard.
And the grass always seems greener,
right.
doesn't it?
And I think, and we both thought that, you know, a lot of couples give up because it gets hard. And they don't stick together through the challenges. They don't work through their issues. They don't become healers for each other and healers, you know, letting God to heal the relationship. And I think we come to a relationship to heal. I think we come in with our damages and our wounds and our issues, and then God wants to heal us together. And so we knew that couples give up because of all that. So if we could write this book and help people stay together, then we would make an impact for the kingdom. And I also share my faith story within the book, within the framework of our relationship. But that is why we wrote it, because we knew how hard it was. We knew we'd been through, we knew other couples were dealing with the same thing. And it's a miracle, like you two staying together, it's a miracle that we survived.
Well, I love that you called it grit, because I feel like so many people, and especially in the last 10 years or so with all the social media thing, everyone is having the best life ever. I mean, they're on vacations and, you know, they're on horseback on the beach and everything's so beautiful, and they're staying at these resorts and they're in these beautiful fields and they're so in love. It's so ridiculous, it's so over the top, and everyone looks at their life like, you know, what are we having for dinner? Like, why are the clothes still dirty? I don't know. Where's my shirt? I don't know. You know, things like that. And you look at it and you're like, if you don't decide in your heart that divorce is not an option, giving up is not an option, and that is off the table no matter what, you're not going to make it. And so when you said grit, I asked you about that. I was like, what does this mean? And I'm so glad you chose that, because I feel like people are have fallen prey to just easy and feeling like, oh, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This just isn't, you know.
I love that. You want to share what grit stands for?
Yeah, so grit is an acronym, G-R-I-T, and the G stands for God. And this is an obvious one for you all, but for a lot of couples, it's not. And so one of the things that happened in our story when Jon had shared his infidelity and I was going to leave him is he came home one day and he said, we are going to have a prayer together. And you have to understand, I didn't want to talk to him. And he just kept saying this prayer. And I would act like I didn't hear it. And he would lay in bed at night and say it. And I would not. He'd try to reach for my hand and I wouldn't, you know, let him touch me. But he just kept saying this prayer. And one night, I'll never forget it, I realized I knew the prayer. Like I knew what he was saying. I had memorized it somehow. And so I said it in my head, but I still didn't say it out loud. And then a little while later, I realized I want to say this prayer. And I reached for his hand and we said it together. And do you want to say the prayer?
And God, we invite you into our marriage to love us, to unite us, to heal us, and to strengthen us so we can grow strong together and serve you together and raise children that glorify and honor you, God. So that was prayer. And that happened because she wasn't talking to me. I had to go do some events, which were some of the hardest events I had to go speak at, feeling like just like a failure. And it doesn't matter how much success you have in the world, if you fail at home, you're a failure. And I had to go out there and do that. And I met this guy on a plane. And I started telling this stranger my story. My wife won't talk to me, this is happening. And he's a Christian. And he says, you know, my wife and I say a prayer before bed every single night. And it's made our marriage so much stronger. I was like, wow. I said, God, what prayer should we say? I said, what's that prayer, God? And God literally gave me the prayer. I wrote it on a little piece of paper and wrote down the prayer that God gave me. We put it in the book. We shared it on Instagram, everything. I was trying to, help people bring their, God into their relationship. See, that's the thing. G is the key for grit, because you can't do it alone. With two chords, which we are without God, right? We're easily breakable. But with God, he's the third chord. We become unbreakable with God at the center of our relationship. So that prayer helps us make God the center of our relationship. But then we also did, this is really powerful, God spoke to us and said, you need a covenant. Not just vows, not just your vow. That was your vow at your marriage, but you need a covenant. Like going forward, both of you need to make a covenant with me and each other, and obviously with me first, that you're gonna be faithful to each other for the rest of your lives. And we both we had this covenant with God in our marriage. So it wasn't just a prayer, but a covenant.
Wow. You know, the man that married us, he played in the AFL back before there was the NFL. So he's a man's man. And that couple is the reason that we're still married. Because when everybody else really gave up, they pressed in. And he looked at me one day, he said, Lee, he goes, this kind of ties with what Pastor Jeff Little was talking about to the men. He says, pray with the fullness of oneness.
I love that.
He said, the fullness of oneness. He says, when you're praying by yourself, you're operating, as a married person, you're operating in about half the power that God's given you. But when you pray with your spouse, you're operating in the fullness of oneness. And it's very powerful. And so the more I would pray with Laura, and it not just bless the food or whatever, but like really pray. She started like really praying over me. Lord, give him favor in his business, Lord. Help him with these deals that he's working on. And I mean, it became just a back and forth. And what it did for our marriage, not only did it raise our level of faith, but also it increased our level of intimacy. You know, and guys, it was awkward at first. It was very awkward. I would focus on her eyebrow.
It was so weird. I'd be like, what are you looking at?
Because I wanted to look at her and not be like, you know, all over the board. And so I'd look at her, I'd say, yeah, let's pray. And then we got a little momentum, you know, with it.
I love that.
So what's the R?
Go ahead, Jon.
There you go.
R is resolve. You have to resolve to stay together and work on your relationship. It's so easy to give up. Stick together, work it out.
And as you said, like, you have to make that commitment, like, no matter what, like, we're not getting divorced. And that's the thing, like, we look back, we stuck together through all of it, our faith, and definitely we're stubborn. Like, we just wouldn't give up. We just wouldn't quit. And I think some of that is just like blind stubbornness of just not giving up, but that resolve is what kept us going. And we just wouldn't give up when we probably should have. But the intimacy that comes on the other side of that, see, that's the thing. As couples, right? You go through the hard times and it's easy to give up and the grass seems greener. But then when you stick it out, on the other side of that is greater intimacy, greater love, greater connection.
Also, Ken Blanchard, who is Jon's mentor, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, said to Jon, you're in the no cut zone. No cut zone. So that kind of became a joke with us. Like, no matter what's going on, we're in the no cut zone.
Ken also gave marriage saving advice. I called up Ken. Ken, I'm traveling all the time. I'm exhausted, Ken. I get home. My wife wants a neck massage, Ken. I feel like I deserve the massage. What should I do? He said, Jon, give her a massage. He said, if you don't, someone else will. So that night, I gave Kathryn a massage. And I admit it was out of fear, definitely out of fear. But then I started doing laundry out of love. And that became like part of the servant part.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So God, resolve.
Yep, and the I.
Invest. You have to invest in your relationship. You know, how many times do we invest in our friendships? We invest in our employees. We invest in our children. Normally, our spouse is the last person we're investing in. And so it's about taking that time, little things. So for Jon and I'll be in the middle of doing something, I don't want to stop. And he'll say, hey, come read this newsletter. Tell me what you think. I've got to roll my eyes, but I know that I need to give that time. A lot, it's the little things, right?
Oh, yeah. And then she'll say, hey, can you help with the groceries? I'm like, sure. Kathryn started a podcast. Can you listen to this? Yes, I'll listen to this. And in the past, I have to admit, like in the beginning of our marriage, no. Like, I'm too busy. I was like, I'm too busy. All the
time,
a lot.
I'm writing.
I was a consumer. I was not an investor. And we've got to be investors, not consumers. And the thing is, investing, right? You have to make your marriage your number one priority by investing in each other. And it doesn't have to be big investments, as Kathryn just said. So research shows, this is research from Jon Gottman, that couples that make small moments of commitment for each other, like we're talking about, small moments of commitment, a massage, help with the groceries, taking the time to look at something they want to show you. Hey, can you look at this for me? Can you check this out? Hey, I need your help here. Those small moments, 85% more likely to stay married.
Wow.
those small little moments. So it's not the big things really. It is actually the little things for our relationship that are so important. And we put that in the book. We put that statistic and that we share the 4 C's in the book for relationships: communicate, connect, commit, care. You got to communicate, you got to connect. Commit is how you invest, right? Through your investment, you commit. I was at a Miami Heat game a few weeks ago, and Eric Spoelstra's wife, has a seat, and I'm sitting next to her because that's where Eric put me. And she's, so nice. And we start talking, and she tells me about her podcast that she just started. I'm like, oh, my wife just started a podcast. We're talking about that. She said, oh yeah, Eric listens to every one of my podcasts. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't listen to Kathryn's podcasts. Like I've listened to one so far. So the next morning, yeah. So the next morning, I'm having breakfast with Eric. I said, Eric, do you listen to your wife? Do you listen to every podcast? He's like, oh yeah, I'm learning so much. And plus I want to support her. This was a few weeks ago, and I felt like a failure as a husband. And so I made a commitment right there. Again, no matter how old we get, no matter how long we're married, we're gonna be 25 years, May 17th, we can still do better. And so I made a commitment right there that I'm gonna listen to every one of her podcasts. And you know what? They are awesome. And I love them. They're great. They're great. They really are great. And I've learned a lot, and I'm supporting, I'm investing, I'm committing. Again, I'm too busy working on my stuff. No, we gotta make time to invest in. I remember our son came in one time, and I'm there on the computer. He's like, Dad, you wanna play ping pong? I'm like, no, I'm too busy. Comes in again, Dad, you wanna play ping pong? This was early on. He was young. I was a young dad. Dad, wanna play ping pong? No, I'm too busy. I said, I'm writing a book about engaged relationships. Hypocritical moment, but a convicting moment. I said, I've gotta do better. So I think, guys, do we all have to do better? Can we do better?
I think what you're saying, investing versus consuming.
Right.
Let's not miss that. But it's the small things. I think sometimes we get overwhelmed because we're thinking we gotta make these big investments rather than the small ones. And it's kind of like life is gonna force you to draw down on whatever equity you have in the relationship. So it's making those deposits and creating equity in the relationship. That's what, Laura and I've, and we're still a work in progress after 32 years, but it's like trying to make these small deposits, when we can, because life is gonna force you to draw down. And if you don't have any equity, you're gonna come up short and something's gonna break, right?
And I encourage you guys that if it sometimes that seems overwhelming, we've talked about that before, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have this great, and we're gonna invest in our relationship in 2026, for sure. That's that week that we're gonna take that cruise.
We're forecasting.
And it's amazing. I will see you then. And it's like, no, let's just do something simple this weekend. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it can be just, focused time.
Yes.
I almost said unfocused, but focused.
And it doesn't have to be there's a thing about date night. It doesn't have to always be date night. What do we do? What's our thing?
Yeah, we walk on the beach.
Yeah.
We'll take walks. And I'm gonna tell you, a lot of times we fight in the beginning, but it's like working it out. We argue, but by the end of the walk, we're always on the same page. We're happy, we've got the endorphins. It's
by
the
the
truth.
end, by the end.
It's the truth.
I'm like, I'm so glad we did this.
I mean, it's not, but we feel so much more connected.
Yes.
Right? And we have that, it gives us that level of intimacy. So, yeah, that's our thing. Find your thing, right?
Right. That's right. All right, what's the T?
Go ahead, John.
No, you did.
Go ahead, John.
Together.
Yeah. You cannot want it and your spouse doesn't. You have to do it together. And it doesn't always mean it's equal. It doesn't mean you have to both give the same amount at the same time, but you have to both want it.
And there is an ebb and flow. And it was that year that she called me off the road and said, I really need you home. And I have to be honest, my career was just starting to take off. And I'm like, I'm now living the dream that I've been working for. I'm living my mission and purpose. I said, I've got to live my mission and purpose. She said, your mission and purpose is at home. That's what she said. And so instead of doing 15 engagements a month, I cut it back to 2. So now I'm home with my family, right? All the time. And I had been on the road 100 events a year, so 200 days a year. So now I'm home with my family. And I realized, wow, she was struggling, the kids were struggling, and I want to be honest, I wanted a different team. I really was wow, they're messed up. I really wanted a different team. And she was the committed one. I clearly wasn't. And so I made that commitment to serve, right? So then I started taking my daughter to school every day. Would bring her food for her, my mom was Jewish mother, so they call me the Jewish mother. So I would bring her food for her before her games. My son, I started to spend more time with him, invested in him. It was really the hardest year of my life because every bone in my body wanted to focus on me. But I realized at the end of the year, I was at my best when I focused on we and our team. And you know what? I realized at the end of the year, I didn't need a different team. They weren't the problem. I was. I needed to be a better leader who committed to my team and invested in them because it was everybody else. I wasn't investing, I wasn't committing. And that commitment that year, again, changed the dynamic of our relationship, our kids' relationship, and I truly became a better leader that year. Every book I've written since that time has been a Wall Street Journal bestseller. Since that time, because I was now walking the walk and able to really talk about real leadership because I understood what it meant then. Because I didn't really understand it before. And now it's really about selflessly investing. Like, come on, as parents, leadership is really selfless, isn't it? In so many ways. It's not like when you're leading your kids, they're going, Dad, you're doing a great job. I've noticed, like when you yelled at me the other day and you held me accountable, I thought that was really great, the way you did that. I could tell you're really improving as a leader. No, you hear it about now, right? As your kids are older, Harrison's just starting to realize how awesome you are now, right? And
what is it? The older that they get, the smarter I become.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so really it is about selfless leadership, and I think a part of me had to learn that and become selfless.
And that year, we came up with the meeting around the table. I heard you guys wrote a book on that.
It's called
the Family Meeting Guide.
I love that.
Yeah, and we're going to write one. Ours is a fable, so it won't be. Yeah. But it'll be good to bring it all together.
We didn't even know. We both did this over the years.
That was such a game changer for our family.
A family meeting.
That really, really united us. And we found out more about what was going on with our kids in school, just with their emotions, with sports. And again, it was hard to do. I mean, we would call a family meeting and sometimes it would be me groaning like, oh, here we go. But it never failed. Jon would lead us with something, it was rather scripture or something inspirational.
Or video, yeah.
It never failed that what he was gonna share, and we didn't talk about it beforehand, always applied to something one of us was going through, every time.
And then we found out challenges. We shared our challenges, so then our kids would have to come up with like solutions.
Yeah.
And we would try to come up with solutions for what they were going through. We had our mission. Yeah, I know you talk about a family mission statement, right? We would share our 1 words as part of that. So really recommend it if you're not doing it, a family meeting. Yeah. Family meeting guide.
Tells you how to do what the corporate world does, and even the church world. You guys as pastors or business owners or leaders, you try to create this culture, and you're trying to lead your teams with values, mission, all these different things that you're developing. You go off site, you invest in bringing in great speakers and trainers and all these things, but do we do that at our own families? Right. Do we set, we're the Domingues and this is what we value and why? Not just a cool buzzword of leadership or faith or generosity. It's why, and it needs to be collaborative because they're expecting you as the parent to dictate. And they're gonna close off. But it's collaboration that they're part of building, this is what we value. And probably the most powerful thing that we experienced, I basically put together a PowerPoint presentation. I sent an invitation to all of my family. Bella was 10 at the time.
I love that.
Like a Fortune 100 board meeting. Agenda, questions, nice folder with your name on it and everything else. She's sitting at the boardroom table we were at. Her nose is this all. And so she had her own, but we were trying to instill in them this is important. But one of the questions that we asked them to come prepared with is, come prepared with 3 character traits that you value in every single one of us and why. And that was a 4-hour exercise. Yeah, we have a lot of kids, but it was a 4-hour exercise and about 3 boxes of Kleenex. Because when they're looking at each other, everyone knows, oh, I know you love me, but saying it and eyeball them and saying, Dad, I love you because of this and I value this in you and thank you for this. And man, it was wild. And something happened that time, and we've been doing it for 6 years. But it is,
and I think even when the siblings,
time. Yeah.
and 3 of my kids are in here right now, but even when the siblings talked to each other and said the things, and I think I felt like we were pretty close, and they all knew, they have great relationships with each other, but something about that moment to say something, and they would say things that remember back in middle school, this really meant everything to me, something like that. And that was 10 years ago. And they were able to use that moment to draw back on something that they probably would have never just said, like what you do. And so it was very powerful. So, I sobbed just watching them talking to each other. And I was like, I'm just gonna be over here crying. Just keep going, keep going.
Yeah. But it just solidified, because the world's gonna try to dictate the value system. Let's not have compliant families. Let's have families that have had this heart change, they're totally bought in because they're a part of it, rather than us dictating to them. And we're still a work in progress. We learn stuff every single year that we do and try to make it better. What are you dreaming about? What's your greatest fear that you have right now? And then how can we as a family help you walk through that? And it's just set our family on a different course, I would say. But it's not perfection. It intimidated us. It was so awkward the first time. We're sitting there looking at each other like, oh my God, this is weird. And then it was like, God just dropped in our heart. Why don't you be transparent? You're saying that's one of your values because it lays the bed for the foundation of trust. So why don't you be transparent? So we went there on something we were struggling with. And our kids are like, okay. But it broke the dam that was there. And then they started opening up to us.
And it is cool, like they'll just say things out of the blue that they would never say normally. And so they start to reveal themselves and it starts to come out, like just when you're all sitting there and you provide the space for that and then it comes out. But yeah, a lot of things came out that were really helpful. Not everything, but things, but things did come out. But yeah, and I think one of the best exercises, by the way, for your teams also, and you can do it as your family too, that I've encountered, is the hero hardship highlight exercise. If you're looking for a starter, who's your hero and why? What's a hardship you faced that made you who you are today? And then what's a highlight in your life that you're proud of? And then you can add a fourth H, what do you hope for? And I do a lot with teams, but it's also a thing you can do with your family as well, just to have the conversation going. And the mission statement obviously is, what's your family mission statement? Ours is to love and honor God in all that we do. And so when Jade was hitting Cole, are you honoring God in all that you do by doing that? So we would align to the mission statement.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
No. What would you say? What would you say is relationally, because you both have these responsibilities. You both have, because of how you're wired and because the doors God's opened up in your life, that there's a demand there. And so how do you sustain it? How do you guys sustain what's on your life? Because you're obviously very gifted. There's a lot of pastors and business people in here that are very gifted. But if you lean so much just on the gift, you created the ability basically to implode over it because you can't sustain it, right?
Yep.
So how do you guys stay healthy to sustain what's on your life?
I think there's a season for everything. What do you say? We look at our year in the course of, we don't find balance each day or each week. We find it in the course of the year. And there's a season for everything. So we know we're gonna be really busy at this point, but we're gonna find time here. So as a speaker, December and July were always, slow months. So we'd always do our family vacations and spend a lot of time together and connect and really spend, meaningful connections during that time. So we look in the course of the year and try to figure out when we're gonna go on our family vacations, knowing we were coming here. We're like, okay, let's go in a day or two early and let's spend some time together and be a part of this, to nourish each other, in our relationship. And so making that, just like you all are here. I think, by the way, what you do, and this is so incredible. Can we just give it up for how amazing this is? Yeah. There's nothing more important because we don't take that time. So I think being intentional with that, and now with Kathryn having her own podcast, people are asking her to speak now. So now I'm finding I'm really have to be intentional to be supportive of her. Because I got a million things. We now have consulting, we have training. I have more people on my team than I've ever had, but I've learned how to be a better leader. So now it's about empowering and delegating and being there for them, which I'm an introvert, so it's really hard. I'm happiest when I'm writing. Conversations exhaust me in many ways. And so and I've had to now lead, and now when Kathryn's, hey, what do you think about this? Can we go over this? We'll create the outline, and then she'll go and run with it. So I'm having to be, I think it's being, again, we're all so busy. How do we be intentional in supporting each other, whatever stage you're in, how old the kids are, making sure that we support each other along the way.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in raising kids, we don't, I know none of us in here want our kids to hate what we do.
Right.
But there can be an element of that to where, because it's in competition. And I heard a guy say this one time, he said, and he's a pastor, he said, I asked him a question, said, how, because you've been able to sustain ministry for so long, what's the secret? And I said, is it God? I didn't know. I was like, is it God first, your family second, and your ministry third? And he says, no. He says, it's God first, my family first, and the ministries first. And he goes, they're all tied together. So we've created these equity moments of exposing our kids to being involved in this so they don't hate what we do. And I think a lot of times that it's like, it's us and them, and instead of it being we, in the family sector.
Right. Our daughter just started speaking.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, so she's 23, and she came to us and she said, I want to start speaking. She was working as a hostess at Nobu in Malibu, living out there, learning the service industry, paying her bills, supporting herself, which we said, you've got to learn to be hungry and learn how to, provide for yourself. And then just recently, after hustling, doing that for a year and a half, 2 years, she's like, I want to write and speak. Because she had opportunities to go work for different marketing companies and so forth. But she said, no, I want to write and speak. That's what I feel led to do. So literally, she just gave her third talk the other day to Clemson baseball. And I said to her, Jade, was I gone too much? I really was concerned about that. Was I gone too much? And she said, no, Dad, I don't remember you being gone a lot. I remember the moments we were together. See, that taught me, yes, it's important to spend more time than not, but it's also what you're doing in those moments and how engaged you are. So you're engaged when you're at work, and then you're engaged with your home. But I love what you said, bringing them also into your world so that they're a part of it. Kathryn's always asking Jade advice and questions, so they're a part of it. Our son, he's been struggling the last couple of years. He had some mental health challenges. We brought him home from college during quarantine isolation. We brought him home and we asked you to pray for him. And that's been tough. So, he went to a place called Onsite and came home, and we sat around the table and literally talked about what we did wrong. What we did wrong, and had a great conversation about what we could have done better as parents. And how sometimes I pushed them too hard, especially when they were younger. I got better as they got older. When they were young, I was the driver and pushed too much. And how that made them feel. They had no issues with Kathryn. She was perfect. Seriously, no issues. It was all me. And I, it was so funny. But but we had that conversation. Again, this was maybe about a year ago now. Yeah, about a year ago, and just a powerful conversation to have in terms of just a way to connect, a meaningful connection. And again, I think that makes them, again, not look at you as a hypocrite doing this work, but talking about what you did wrong and how you can get better.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I think a great question we always try to ask is, for you guys, if you could share, is what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow. Do you know?
Go ahead.
I think about this often.
Yeah.
When I turned 50, I said, all right, I'm having a new optimistic goal. I'm going for 100. In the words of the great American theologian, John Bon Jovi, I'm halfway there, living on a prayer. With a goal of leaving a legacy. And I think, I really know, to do this work, it's really about, I want my kids when I die to say, they meet someone and they say, hey, I read something your dad wrote, or I saw him, and he impacted me in this way. Then I know I made a difference. And really, that's it. At my funeral, it's that I made a difference in the lives of others. Nothing else matters, right? Cars don't matter, houses don't matter, whatever, all of it fades away, but, Jesus said, store up your treasures in heaven, and honestly, the impact we have. And so that's why I think what you do is everything. What you do is everything. And to me, that means everything. So it's really investing in the eternal. So it's about leaving a legacy.
We call it an e-ROI, eternal return on investment.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And when the kids were young, I would say, Kathryn, like you're raising champions. You're raising champions. And being a former athlete who played, in college, I was probably too athletic focused and minded. You're raising champions. And when I realized when they got older, it wasn't about raising athletic champions. It was about raising champions for life and for God. So, yeah. So what's your legacy?
Well, we talk a lot about this, but one of the things that we've noticed is he was saying that the kids say he hasn't done anything, that I haven't done anything wrong. And what it is that no matter what, and I did do a lot wrong, but they always knew I loved them. And so it was about giving that love.
And you always talk to them.
Right, and I did communicate.
All the time.
Communicate with them constantly, and I found the sweet spots of doing that. And so legacy, how would you, it's probably about the same thing, is just letting, for my kids especially, letting them know that they're loved no matter what. And
Kathryn always talked to them, and that's what I loved what Jeff Little said yesterday. As men, like we have to do that. We have to create the space for conversations. And I didn't do that enough when they were younger. Now I call my son all the time. We talk all the time. During COVID, he was home and I was home. And so it was the greatest blessing ever. I will never be, unhappy about that time with COVID and everything being canceled and all that, because I got to have a relationship with my son. And we really connected in a meaningful, deep way that we never had before. And so now, I don't think it's too late, right? I'm 51, he's 22, and yet I'm still working on investing in that relationship. Because I had a biological father who left when I was a year old, a stepfather who raised me since I was 5. And so growing up in that thing, I saw the difference between a dad who committed, the stepfather, and the one who didn't, the biological father. And so I never wanted to be like that biological father, but I was probably more like him early on than I wanted to be. But Jesus changed everything in me and changed my heart, my soul, and everything, and made me someone different who actually, cared and served.
And I saw that transformation, right? There's no doubt that's
so
when things changed.
Our faith, no doubt. That's why I'm so passionate about what you all do, because when we give our life to Jesus, like we need a savior because we can't save ourselves. And when we do, it doesn't just impact our own lives, but it impacts everyone around us.
So in the book, we give tips. We give some tips. So I wanted to share one. When we were in the throes of stress with the kids, the sports, Jon was traveling all the time. One morning he walks in, yet again, all dapper in his suit with his suitcase, and I'm standing in the kitchen, my hair's disheveled, kids are late for the bus, and I look over at him and I wanted to cut him down. I really wanted to say something to make him feel bad about himself. And what I realized in that moment was it's because I felt bad about myself. And so right then, I made a commitment to compliment him. And I looked over and I'm like, Jon Gordon, you look so good today. You better watch it. All the ladies are gonna be checking you out. And he got this smile on his face. It was the biggest smile. And I realized, oh my gosh. And I started doing it. And I kept doing it. And the more I did it, the better I felt about myself, And so it became a thing with us. And so I always say, let the best thing that your spouse hears about themselves come from you.
Oh, that's good.
That's a mic drop right there.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, you may have mic drop. Yeah, that's good.
That's so good.
Because it made a difference.
Yeah.
It really did. Yeah.
Well, you guys are a blessing.
By the way, I want to give my number if any of you guys want to ever reach out to me in any way. I just want to give my cell to you guys. It's 904-514-2722. 904-514-2722. And if I can ever encourage you in any way, and I'm sure Kathryn would be happy to give her number to the women here if you'd like.
904-318-9114. And I'm on Instagram at Kathryn Gordon.
Check out her podcast. It's awesome.
Kathryn for real.
Yeah,
That's my
Kathryn for real.
podcast.
She always says, I'm for real. I tell like it is. And Jon is positive. It doesn't always go together.
Yeah.
Where can they get the podcast? But where can they get your resources?
Oh, just JonGordon.com, JON Gordon.com.
Yeah.
And
all
your books are on Amazon.
Amazon
Yeah.
website. Yeah.
So what they don't know is your generosity and how you've invested in this. This guy he ain't cheap, right? He's not like like, okay, just give whatever. But when I talked to him on the phone, I had already done my due diligence and was like, okay, this is gonna be a significant investment. And when he heard what we were doing, he says, oh, no. He says, forget about that. He goes, you do whatever. And he goes, matter of fact, just cut that down. No, we're gonna come in, we're gonna do this. We wanna serve you guys. And so I just wanna thank you and honor you both for your generosity. Yeah. Because you know what, brother, you guys are not hired guns. You are spirit-infused, incredible leaders that God is using in the marketplace and in churches and in the body of Christ, and we need you. And so you are fresh air, and so we just honor you and we thank you for investing in us. You guys, please give it up for Jon and Kathryn. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Legacy Starts Today. I want to encourage you that it's never too late to turn around your relationships and change your habits. If you're looking for more resources, check out Jon and Kathryn's book, Relationship Grit, available on Amazon. Don't forget to share this content if you think it'll help more people and tag me on your socials. I'd love to see what you're enjoying. Until next time, have a great week and don't forget, your legacy starts today.
To learn more, follow us on social media at kingdombuilders.us. And join us next time for Legacy Starts Today with Lee Domingue.